Yeah, definitely. It's going to make you feel tired, fatigued. You're not going to have any motivation. It also plays a part in blood sugar regulation. So we know that if our blood sugar is not stable or in some nice, consistent level, we're going to have sugar cravings. We're going to have salt
Yeah,
cravings. This is what happens. It's a roller coaster. If we go up, we have to come back down. And
yeah.
unfortunately, that crash is where we end up getting into all these different types of cravings. So magnesium plays a very specific role in
Yeah,
sugar balance, insulin
yeah.
resistance issues, and stuff like that.
That's my friend Dr. Barb. She's a neuropathic doctor, and in this episode, episode number 5 of the Mark Iron Method, she's going to show us in simple steps how to lower stress, inflammation, and stop those cravings. So we're much more likely to hit our goals with our diet or whatever it is and maintain great moods and energy throughout the day. So without further ado, let's roll into episode 5 of the Mark Iron Method. All right. So, welcome, Dr. Barb. It's fantastic to have you here. And what we want to do today is help people with the stress response so they're not burning through, the emotional stress that we're experiencing this crazy time with the COVID-19, and try and help the listeners with immunity and staying out of the stress response, because as we know, that just greatly diminishes our immunity. So, where do you think is an appropriate place to start with that, Dr. Barb?
Well, first of all, with the stress response, lifestyle factors are always the number one way we have to deal with that. And when we're talking about lifestyle factors, we're just talking about proper sleep, proper nutrition, the amount of exercise we get, and obviously then our stress management. So that is definitely the first place you want to start, because all of those impact your immune system, and all of those impact the way we how our stress response actually presents. So I definitely would start with, making sure we get adequate sleep, 7 to 9 hours every night, eating a balanced and whole foods diet. Obviously, taking a vitamin mineral supplement may also be beneficial for us. And then, of course, looking at how we can manage that stress response. So that's where I would start. And then from there, definitely look at other avenues such as supplementation and making sure that we do have adequate vitamin mineral status, and even food homeostasis.
Absolutely. On Instagram there, I see you talk a lot about magnesium and how important that is. Can you just outline a few of the benefits, I guess you could say, from magnesium, how it can drive into better health and also better brain function and staying out of a stress response?
Right. So magnesium is actually involved in over 700 different types of reactions in the body. So basically everything that our body has to do has to have magnesium in order for it to work properly. The problem is, due to our depleted soils and due to the fact that there are probably 12 to 15 really great reasons why magnesium does get depleted in the body, most of us are magnesium deficient. So when we're looking at it from the stress response, magnesium is needed to blunt that response, but excessive stress also depletes magnesium. So we're
That's
kind
true
of
too.
in this teeter-totter, and so we need to be supplementing magnesium. Unfortunately, our foods today don't hold the same magnesium values or levels than they did even 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And this is just to soil and, just reduced over farming and stuff like that. So it becomes important that we take a supplement for magnesium, because we can't get what we need from our food.
Yeah. Well, I've seen some scientists talk about that magnesium is bound to ATP, which is basically our energy throughout the day. So if we were lacking magnesium, would it be fair to say that if we'll be feeling tired, and that will make us have cravings and reach for junk food and things like that?
Yeah, definitely. It's going to make you feel tired, fatigued. You're not going to have any motivation. It also plays a part in blood sugar regulation. So we know that if our blood sugar is not stable or in some nice, consistent level, we're going to have sugar cravings. We're going to have salt cravings. This is what happens. It's a roller coaster. If we go up, we have to come back down. And unfortunately, that crash is where we end up getting into all these different types of cravings. So magnesium plays a very specific role in sugar balance, insulin resistance issues and stuff like that.
I've also noticed that the foods that we crave, ironically, don't have a lot of magnesium in it. So if we've got low energy and we go to junk food, it's not going to help us whatsoever. It could just bring us up temporarily and crash us back down again. That'd be a fair call.
Right. Yeah. So most of the foods that we're craving are usually salt, sugar, and bad fats. Those are the foods that, they alter and play with because they become addictive. And it activates our reward pathway in the brain. And so we like that, it makes us feel good. It makes us, give that burst of energy. But at the same time, when the crash happens, we're just going back for the reward. The problem with that is we'll need more and more every single time.
Yeah, that's a great insight. So every time we go back for that junk food, our reward pathway triggers a habit, a stress habit to basically go for that junk food again. But unfortunately, as I've learned, most of that junk food is highly inflammatory. So that's just going to make you tighter and make you want to, I guess, go home and to the couch and just quit for the day.
Right. And usually when we have blood sugar issues, so when our sugars in our blood are not stable, that creates an inflammatory response. And it gets very scientific because it breaks down some molecules, and we won't get into that. But what that actually does is it creates an inflammatory state. And now our immune system is activated because it's saying, uh-oh, there's something going on here. We have to come out and we have to put out this fire. And so if we are in a chronic state of this, for a roller coaster of blood sugar, our immune system is up and down, our inflammation is through the roof, and we're going to burn out. And that'll lead us to disease, illness, autoimmunity, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so this is just one thing that we get through diet, and it can cause all those things. So I would imagine that vitamins and minerals are extremely important if you want to have a consistent day where you've got energy, where you feel good. So that would, I guess, at the feel-good hormones and endorphins that we produce would certainly need all these vitamins and minerals, would it?
Yeah. The endorphins are obviously not going to, the reward pathway does have endorphins in there. That's what makes us feel good when we eat the sugar and the salt. But if we didn't have the craving, if we back up and we don't have the craving, that same reward pathway isn't activated to the same degree. So we really have to move backwards and start with a solid diet and a solid, ratio of vitamins and minerals in order to not get to the point where we are having those.
So basically it's a foundation where your body has everything that it needs so you can perform throughout the day consistently.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It certainly connects the dots for me to understand why I get cravings, because if the body's experiencing scarcity, it's going to go for cravings. But unfortunately, the junk food is just too close, too easy to get to, and it's devoid of all these vitamins and minerals. And so the circle just keeps continuing. So.
Right. And alongside the vitamins and minerals, like we need to have a balanced diet, even when it comes to like the macronutrients, right? So we want to make sure that our diet isn't like predominantly carbohydrate, because that's going to drive that pathway again, and it's going to, release those receptors and want us to we're going to feel good and comforted by those carbohydrates, and we're going to then tend to lead to eating more of these types of foods, and those types of foods are usually not that nutritionally dense for us.
Exactly. So I guess the take home from vitamins and minerals could be that triggers dopamine, the reward pathway, to create habits to go for junk food, which is not going to fix the problem. The
Right.
foundation, I believe, would be to have everything that our body needs to function throughout the day consistently. And then we
Right.
won't be distracted by these cravings to go for junk food, which,
Right.
after we eat it, I mean, it feels good at the time. We feel fantastic, but then we come crashing back down and
Right.
we're triggered by dopamine, again, the reward pathway, to feel good, to go reach for junk food, to continue and continue.
Exactly. And then it just becomes a vicious cycle, right? Because
Yeah,
it's just
yeah,
like we're just going through the same motions and the same phases. It's just, it gets worse.
yeah,
But the cycle is continuous. It doesn't
yeah,
change. Yeah.
yeah. So where do fats play into this? What's your take on healthy fats, bad fats, and fats in general?
Healthy fats are definitely a key component and should be a key component in the diet. Um, when we're looking at polyunsaturated fats, we want to be careful there. Some of those aren't the best, but some of them are still, like nuts and seeds, some of them are polyunsaturated, and there's nothing wrong with that. The vegetable oils we have a problem with, but also the omega-3 essential fatty acids are really good for us, and they help reduce inflammation. They help to activate that pathway that helps to reduce inflammation. And unfortunately, we don't get enough of those. And
No.
so that becomes an issue. And so in the population today, we also have what's called omega-6 essential fatty acids, which are your vegetable oils. It's in a lot of processed foods. It's in a lot of fast food, and in some nuts and seeds as well. But our ratios are so off kilter, which creates a whole problem downstream with inflammation.
Yes, right. I've noticed that the omega-6 to 3 ratio is a big, big problem when it gets above, I think, 10 to 1 from what I've looked at the research. And what I've found is that omega-6 is everywhere.
Yeah.
It's just in every fast food, junk food that we go through. It's
Yeah.
just, that's what's there. And
Yeah.
if we have tendencies to go towards junk food, that ratio creeps up and up and up. So
Right.
what actually happens when the ratio gets a bit too high, omega-6 to 3, those essential fatty acids?
So we have to first, I guess, so omega-6s are more pro-inflammatory. So they
Right.
create inflammation. And then omega-3s are more anti-inflammatory. So they help kind of reduce that inflammation. So, and it's funny that you say 10 to 1. In Canada, we're looking at a 20 to 1 ratio.
Yeah.
Of what people are consuming on omega-6s to omega-3s. And as soon as that happens, we do look at obviously a higher inflammation state because we're getting more of those inflammatory components. And then the omega-6s also increase, like they were doing studies, whereas as omega-6s rose, the levels of obesity rose.
Right.
And that was a direct relation to the inflammation that was being caused by the omega-6s.
I guess inflammation is extremely draining with energy. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then if we look at it from like the endocannabinoid system, omega-6 will actually impact the signaling of that system and not make it work as efficiently as it should be, which then leads to increased inflammation and mood. It impacts mood. So a
Mood
lot
as well.
of depression and anxiety, they're now starting to realize is coming from this aspect.
Right. Okay. So it's a complex thing. I guess the listeners probably wouldn't understand the ratio in depth, but the take home is that there's a big juxtaposition. You've got omega-6 really high and omega-3 really low. And if you think
Right.
about it from an inflammatory standpoint, if you've got a 20 to 1 ratio, you're 20 times more likely to produce inflammation. Is that right?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, in my practice, I do practice like when I see those types of ratios, my goal is to get people to a 3 to 1. And I've even seen 2 to 1.
Yeah.
But, that's going to make a dramatic difference when we're looking at inflammation if you're sitting at 20 to 1. But yes,
Yeah.
it's like basically 20 times the inflammation that you should not be getting.
Right. I guess it signals pain as well too. So if you've got a niggling tennis elbow or some kind of joint pain, it's going to hit that harder all the time.
Or it could actually create that joint pain.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So it could create
so much inflammation. It's going to attack the healthy tissue,
yeah.
right? Because the immune system is now at a point where it doesn't know what to do anymore. It's just been activated so many times that, you know, it's kind of like the story of, you know, the crying wolf story where, you know, every time he cries wolf, and then when there's really a wolf, it doesn't work, right? And so this is our immune system. We keep activating it, that when we actually need it, it can't do its job because it's just so worn out. It's starting to attack itself.
Right, yeah. So I guess it would drive into arthritis and issues like that. If it's going to be attacking the joints, the collagen, the tendons, it could actually, that high ratio could just spark that whole arthritis. Is that right?
Right. So on a lower level, yes, you could definitely have more joint pain, muscle pain. You could also see weight gain. These are kind of like the minor things. And then if we take that to the next level, obviously autoimmune disease.
Right. I guess that would drive up stress hormones like cortisol as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a good situation to be in. So that's going to happen not just, you know, here and there. That would be chronic all the time. Would that be right? When you've got a high ratio. So people could be struggling, being tired, have joint pain, and wake up in the morning, be stiff and sore, and it could be all stemmed to this high ratio.
Right. And usually, like, once inflammation does its damage, it's usually the chronic low-grade inflammation. And for a long time, we don't feel the inflammation, right? So it's kind of below the pain threshold. And it's kind of burning and burning and burning. And then one day, like you say, you're going to get up and you're going to be like, oh my goodness, like all my joints hurt, or, you know, my knees hurt, or my hips. It usually goes into like the larger joints.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't give us, like, a lot of the times it's very silent, and we don't really see it or experience it until it gets to the point where it's actually damaging tissue.
Right. Yeah. I saw a research paper from Professor Sapolsky where he said that pain, inflammation, or high cortisol, it's going to actually inhibit the production of a lot of our feel-good hormones. And because we don't feel good, we have vices. And I guess the junk food is going to be one of those vices that temporarily makes us feel good, but it's going to add more fuel to the fire.
Right. And even with cortisol, once cortisol is elevated, cortisol regulates our inflammation and regulates our immune system. That's its job. It has so many jobs as well. I mean, we look at cortisol as being a bad hormone, but it's really not a bad hormone. It's a bad hormone if it's elevated and consistently on alert all the time. But cortisol regulates inflammation and our immune system. So if you've got elevated cortisol all the time, it can't do its job. So
yeah, correct. That makes a lot of sense. And also that wouldn't allow melatonin to come on, you know, towards the end of the day, so you sleep deeply.
Right. So you're going to have, like, not a very good sleep. And, you know, we're back to, you know, sleep. Also, if we don't sleep enough, our immune system is not functioning the way it should be, and our inflammatory state goes up.
Yeah, so that lifestyle that's, you know, bad food, you are what you eat, is literally true. Like, these fats become a part of your cells, they signal inflammation. When the ratio is too high, you've got more aches and pains, you feel tired, you want to go home, it's just a complete mess, and it just fuels and drives itself because people just don't understand that. Number one, what we first talked about, vitamins and minerals are the foundation to keep all these systems turning. But if we have these ratios of omega-6 to 3 out of whack, our whole body doesn't work the way it's evolved or designed to operate. So we just can't operate the way we want to, and we are capable of.
Right. And it's always like we're playing catch up, right? So this is how our whole body is functioning during this time. It's just always playing catch up. The
So,
problem is it's going to break down
yeah.
eventually.
Oh, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I know this all too well. How do you get back? Is it difficult? Does it take long to get the ratio back to where our ancient genes thrive and expect it to be?
It's going to take some work for sure. I
Yeah.
usually tell patients we have to do 3 months, like, because
3 months.
our bodies have to readapt and it has to, I mean, especially when we have inflammatory loads that are high, they didn't happen overnight. They're not going away overnight. This is,
Yeah.
when we have inflammatory loads that are high, this has been happening over months. So I always say to them, you know what, it's 3 months, 3 months of hard work for us to actually see a difference. But most times they're noticing differences within a couple of weeks,
Couple of
like
weeks. Yeah.
noticing minor differences. In the black and white, like if we look at CRP levels, which are inflammatory levels, or the ESR, which is also a measure of inflammation,
Yeah.
those take about 3 months to actually see visible good changes.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So, in a couple of weeks, you can start feeling a lot better. But I guess because we've lowered inflammation, we've lowered cortisol, and we're starting to get good sleep now because cortisol is kind of basically following the circadian rhythm, which is what it should do.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, so most times they notice, like, if they've had like aches and pains, those seem to kind of be less. They also notice they're not as fatigued. This is the big thing
yeah,
that they notice.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah. When you've got energy, you feel good. So
Yeah.
you
And then
do
it's,
you do well.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you start getting that positive feedback, it becomes a lifestyle very quickly, I would assume.
Yeah. They don't want to go back to feeling the way they came in,
Like, yeah.
which is crap.
No, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no. And I find too, like, most of my patients, unless there is a kidney issue, I put them all on magnesium,
Yeah.
because I feel like it's the one mineral that does so many jobs and that we're
Mm,
all lacking. So right away when I put them on that, they feel that in like 3-4 days. Like,
right,
they
yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
And we start slow, like we start low. I don't mass, you know,
Mm,
do dose the magnesium because I don't think you need to, but um, yeah, they definitely have some type of improvement in like a couple of days from just magnesium.
yeah, like magnesium is also, I think, involved in every DNA repair enzyme. So, how important is that? I mean, if you don't have magnesium, you don't have energy, and your DNA repair work isn't being done as it should.
Right. And even one of the biggest things, like, I don't know about you in Australia, but in Canada, we have a big problem with vitamin D deficiency.
Right, yeah,
And vitamin D, we don't get a lot of sun. We have sun for about 3-4 months, and then winter and
yeah,
cold, all the other stuff. But anyway, so a lot of us have vitamin D deficiency. But in order for vitamin D to become active in the body, it needs magnesium to convert that vitamin D into its active form. And
right.
vitamin D plays a big part in immune health. It plays a big part in a lot of different functions in the body. So, and because most people are magnesium deficient, they're also vitamin D deficient.
Of course, yeah. Isn't vitamin D needed, or the vitamin D receptor, to convert tryptophan, the amino acid, into serotonin for the brain?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's,
Definitely. So it plays a big part in mood,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
depression, anxiety, those types of things. Yeah.
yeah. So if you
Yeah.
if you got vitamins and minerals on board where they should be, you've got a pretty good chance that you're going to be making better choices. You're going to be feeling a lot better because you're producing all these serotonin. You're also repairing your DNA. You've also got energy. So it's a huge step in the right direction.
Definitely. Definitely. Because it affects pretty well all of your systems, right?
Yeah,
It's not just one compartment,
yeah,
it's everything.
yeah,
So it definitely is an entire picture that
yeah.
gets corrected. Yeah.
And I guess when you get the omega 6 to 3 ratio back, painkillers wouldn't be so frequently used or needed.
Right. And so what happens with when I see levels of that they're obviously complaining of serious joint pain.
Yeah,
And so NSAIDs are like the number one over-the-counter medication that these people are using. And of course, that's a whole nother video on what that does to our body.
Right, yeah.
But, you know, it's not good. They come with side effects, and long-term use even worse. But yes, getting them off of those NSAIDs is like a priority, because that's just adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah, I've heard that kidney disease, it can also interrupt the flow of blood, and it upregulates thromboxane, which coagulates the blood because it's not allowing a certain enzyme to work. So NSAIDs are a pretty serious issue if you're using them chronically, because your omega-6 to 3 ratio is signaling more pain.
Right, and they also screw up our gut. So
Really?
lots of ulcers, lots of gastric stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So totally. Yeah. Anybody who has like, you know, gastric ulcers, or even like chronic heartburn, those types of things, they've usually had a serious NSAID use history.
Yeah. And it's the unfortunate thing is, when we feel pain, we want to be comforted and move away from that pain. And generally, we reach for comfort food and sit on the couch and watch Netflix and make it worse. The next day, we still got the same or worse inflammation that we started with.
Right. And I mean, just going back on NSAIDs, they're one of the biggest risk factors for leaky gut. And what does leaky gut do?
Right.
It creates inflammation.
Inflammation, right? Systemic inflammation.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing.
Yeah, I saw a research paper that said when we have inflammation, it switches the brain onto a state that scientists call avoidance and alarm. So those two words alone, chronic inflammation, if your brain's in avoidance, wants to go home to the cave and recover, and alarm, I guess negative thoughts are plaguing people. So, I mean, if you get the vitamins and minerals right and start working with a doctor to get your omega-6 to 3 ratio back to where it needs to be, we're going to feel a whole lot better fast.
Right. And sometimes that involves taking an omega-3 supplement, because when they're in that state, it's chronic and it's big, and it's hard to get that volume through food. So, you know, sometimes, you know, I have to use a omega-3 supplement, a liquid supplement, a fish oil, or fish oil capsules or something like that, to kind of stimulate that anti-inflammatory pathway, to kind of calm that inflammation. And we do dose that fairly high initially, and then work our way down from there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's got to be very helpful to the listeners. I mean, and it's really simple stuff too, isn't it? I mean, what goes into the body affects the body profoundly.
Exactly. You don't need expensive supplements that you have to go and hunt for. Usually everything you need is not far from you. And you just, I often say to my patients, if you start with the basics, and then if we have to, obviously if they're coming in chronic pain, we do supplement, because it gives that extra helping hand. But it really goes back to making sure your lifestyle factors are on par. Definitely.
Yeah. And when we're in pain and inflammation, we make really bad choices and make it worse.
Right. And I always say to them, you know what, I don't want to give you this supplement and then you just go home and go, okay, I can take this, just keep eating the way I'm doing, right? That doesn't work. It's not going to work. So you have to make that change and stick with that change. And the supplements are there for that extra helping hand. It's they're not magic pills that allow you to just go out and, eat what you were eating or live the life that you were living.
It's just a lever that we can use to strategically get there faster and feel better quicker. Right.
Sometimes it's more concentrated. It's obviously in better quality and quantity. We sometimes can get in food. Just like magnesium, it's very hard to get it in food in the right amount.
And plus you've talked about that the soil's a bit depleted of magnesium, and that translates to our foods as well.
Right. So how we lose magnesium from the body is through sweat. Alcohol.
Through
stress,
Yeah.
through medications, right? So there's a
Mm.
lot of different ways that we lose magnesium. And if we're not somehow building it back up, we're
Yeah.
going to be in a deficient state, and that's not going to fare well. Yeah.
Yeah. Would it be a fair call to say that, when we have a lot of inflammation, we're creating a lot of metabolites in the body, and that requires a lot of magnesium to burn through as well. So if we're not getting enough magnesium, there's no way our energy can be where it needs to be.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
And that is one of the first things that people will, there's two things actually that when you put somebody on a magnesium supplement, the first two things they say is they often feel like they're floating on a cloud because their nervous system has come down. And the
Right.
second thing is they're energetic, like their fatigue has lifted.
Yeah.
So they don't need to have 2 naps a day, or they don't feel like they're dragging themselves to the next thing in their life. So those are the two big things I often hear after putting on magnesium. So yeah, and those are the systems that it kind of attacks right away,
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It takes your energy offline because it knows you're sick, you're inflamed. It wants you to go home to the cave, to the couch to recover. But we
right,
choose bad food and some alcohol and make it all worse.
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's obviously life isn't completely perfect.
No.
I always say progress, not perfection. So if we can live an 80-20 lifestyle where we're eating really well 80% of the time, and then of course it's not like we're never going, well, not that we're doing any of this right now, but we do go out and we do, have a glass of wine or something, but it's not the predominant part of our life. And that is what, really we have to bring home to patients now.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. It's connected a lot of dots. Yeah. So is there anything else you'd like to add? I think this has been absolutely, connecting the dots and showing people that they can make a lot of change and it's not going to cost them anything. They just have to make better choices. What do you think else we can add to this?
Well, obviously, I mean, it depends what your symptoms are, but I think, just good stress management, making sure that we are supporting the nervous system. So whether that's through, a yoga practice or some meditation or, maybe just having a hot Epsom salt bath, like whatever it is that you resonate with, that's definitely going to help matters. But I think the big thing is we just really got to get a handle on our diet, make sure we're up to par on our vitamins and minerals, get our fats in order, and then obviously do the lifestyle factors. So exercise, getting enough sleep, and making sure our stress is under control.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Exercise is a big part of it too. Yeah.
Exercise can also make you not have cravings because it's going to better regulate and take that sugar out of the blood, right? So it's going to come along and take that out. And it also gives you feel-good hormones too, right? So without having the chocolate or the chips or whatever. So exercise is a fantastic thing. And, I don't think that we look at exercise as
a tool and a lever we can pull on. Yeah.
A lot of people are like, oh, I have to exercise because I don't want to gain weight. Well, that's great. It's going to be very helpful in that, but it also has so many other benefits.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dr. Barb, I think that's going to give our listeners, both yours and mine, a lot of information. Not inflammation, I mean information.
No inflammation.
And so they can start making better choices and connecting the dots to realize that it's not difficult to feel good. We just have to pull on a few levers and make better choices. But I mean, the first couple of weeks will be difficult, but if you've got the support behind you, it's going to make it a lot easier. So
That's right.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that your whole family's on board because you don't want to be the only one. Support and accountability is big.
It's big. Yeah. Wow. I mean, we've got a lot of power. So this is a Mark Iron wrap-up. You can find more about the amazing Dr. Barb, my friend, in the show notes below. But there's 3 important things that I learned from Dr. Barb just then.
Number one, we've got to have what I now think of as workers and building materials. So, if you're trying to make hormones, you need building materials. So these are fats coming into the body, but you also need workers, the vitamins and minerals, to make that happen. So let's think about that. If that's happening 24/7, 365 days a year, you've got a much better chance of having stable mood, stable everything, energy. I mean, everything comes back online. So that's a huge insight. We've got to make sure that because the soil's depleted, we have to make sure that we've got these workers, vitamins and minerals, and also building materials, fats and amino acids in the system, so that our body has all the raw materials and workers to put everything together. Then we can have amazing moods and energy throughout the day. And the second thing I learned from Dr. Barb is that, the older we get, the worse this inflammation becomes. So on screen there, as we can see, if we've got a high omega-6 to 3 ratio, and this is what I learned from Dr. Barb, right? So this is my take on it. If we've got a lot of omega-6, say a 20-to-1 ratio, and omega-3 is down here somewhere, it's going to fuel inflammation, because omega-6 is the one that comes out fighting, right? And that's what we want too. Don't get me wrong. We need omega-6 fighting our battles, taking out pathogens, bacterial infections, viral infections. I mean, this is 2020. This is the COVID year, right? So we want that. But the scientists have shown us that we need it at a 2-to-1, maybe 3-to-1, but ideally a 1-to-1 ratio. So you think about that. You've got enough of the good stuff, taking out the viral infections, and the omega-3s come along and they enhance wound healing and resolve inflammation. So if we get it back here, that's beautiful. And as Dr. Barb said, it's just a matter of 2-3 months of having the right fats coming into the system, and then that will fix itself. So as you can see, I put on screen there, if you're watching on YouTube or on my website, you'll see that it drives inflammation, it produces a lot more stress hormones, and it depletes serotonin. And our serotonin is extremely important for being happy, but also our executive brain. So we can do amazing work and be curious and things like that. So, those are the two big takeaways. But the third big takeaway that I realize is, which is this, it's a very serious topic. Because as this research paper shows, that when you've got a high omega-6 to 3 ratio, you're much more likely to, have cardiovascular disease, cancer, inflammatory immune disease. I had all this. I had asthma, arthritis, high blood pressure. But, working with doctors like Dr. Barb, you can fix this and get back to health, quite quickly. Now, as this research paper says here, a 4-to-1 ratio is associated with a 70% decrease in total mortality. And this is something you can do. It's just what foods you choose to put in your amazing body. And this research paper here, I had arthritis and asthma. So a ratio of 2 or 3-to-1 suppressed inflammation in patients with rheumatoid arthritis. Now, if you know someone that's in pain, joint pain, this is absolutely key. Just refer them to this video or this podcast. Now, a 5-to-1 ratio had beneficial effects for people with asthma, like I had. I've been asthma-free now for 28 beautiful months. But here's the problem, you see. The ratio of 10-to-1 had adverse consequences. Now, right there on screen, where do you think you are? Have you been tested? Do you know where you are? It's a very simple test too. A doctor like Dr. Barb can work this out for you, but you can also go online and download, you order this test. It costs about $60 Australian, and they send it to you in a kit. You get a pin, you prick your finger, you put it on a piece of the paper that they supply, you send it back to them a couple of weeks later, you know exactly what your results are, and then you can start moving in the right direction based on the foods that you choose to eat. So we've got a lot of power, you know, to have great moods, keep the energy where it needs to be, and protect ourselves from modern disease like asthma, allergies, arthritis, cancer, heart disease. And it all comes down to listening to these amazing doctors like Dr. Barb. So that's the Mark I method. Now, if you found this interesting, please give it a thumbs up and rate the podcast, and also refer it to a friend. I mean, if they've got issues like this and they need to see how they can fix this, joint pain, if they're suffering with pain. So there it is. And make sure that you reach out to Dr. Barb and let them know that you saw this episode, and yeah, it was on the Mark I method. So there it is. Again, if you like this, give it a thumbs up. I'd absolutely appreciate that. And we've got a lot of power. Start pulling down on these levers of nutrition.